that first book that you gave me that talked about the two schools of thought.
The Objectivists?
Objectivists.
Yeah, which is different than Ayn Rand's objectivism, but points in the same direction.
Yeah. I'm going to call them naive realists, right? I'm going to talk about this. This is how I understand it.
Great.
Right. There's the idealists. And then the naive realists. Right? Naive realists say that the mind just takes pictures, basically, right? The idealists say you can't ever step outside of the mind to know that there's something that you're perceiving. There's no way to know that. And they're both saying, this one's saying that, look, there's a fundamental ground. If we could just fucking get that, we can get on with it already, right? And they go, look, if there is a fundamental ground, there's no way to be able to get to it, so let's just fucking get that, right? And go on with it. They're both contextually saying the same thing, right? They're both saying there's a ground. This one's saying the ground is no ground. Once we get the no ground, then we can get on with it. This one's saying that there is a ground, and we can get on with it. That impulse and that arguing for the same thing, using different content, does that point to what Rand is calling objective reality? The instinct of the mind to find ground, something substantial. Is this?
No, she would call that egoism.
Okay.
Right? Because I'll talk about Rand, and then I'll talk about me.
Okay. And I have some questions about the difference between identity, and existence.
Right. I sent you a little text.
Yes. Yes, and I resist. I had so much to do. I was like, if I put my toe in the water of this, I will not get anything done.
Good. So Rand says, let's look at the idea existence exists. Galt. So did you read that whole book for the New Intellectual?
I read the second half of it.
The second half of it. So you read Galt's speech?
Yes.
This is John Galt speaking?
Yes.
Okay, great. He says, I speak in the name of a single axiom.
Existence exists.
Existence exists. To exist is to be something, as opposed to non-being.
Right.
Right? And for something to exist presupposes that there's a consciousness that perceives it.
Yes.
Right? So the corollary to existence exists is that consciousness perceives consciousness perceives existence.
Then
consciousness identifies it. So existence equals identity.
Okay.
Consciousness is identification. That's the basis of objectivism. Existence exists, and then I'll say one more thing about it. Existence exists. We are conscious of it. To exist is to be something. It's to have a nature, or as I say, to have a nature. It is to have an identity. It is what it is. Consciousness is identification.
Okay.
Which is why when you look at the two, which is why when you look at the two at the bottom of the of I5. Great. So let's get right into that. So you get that basis. She's saying, John Galt says, this is the foundation on which everything that I stand for is built. I, in fact, am the stand, to put it in landmark terms, I am the stand that existence exists. That existence is identity, consciousness is identification.
Mm-hmm.
That's the basis. Everything grows from there.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay. Now she says, why do I have the right to say that? Who am I to say that?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Why would you possibly listen to me?
Mm-hmm.
Right? In order to describe that, I want to describe the process of an axiom. So John Galt says, I stand on a single axiom, and that's existence exists.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore consciousness. What's an axiom? An axiom is a statement that you have to assert in order to deny it. An axiom is a statement that you have to assert in order to say something else.
Mm-hmm.
And existence exists is the axiom at the bottom of all human thought and communication.
Yes.
That there is not any thought that you can think or speak that does not presuppose that existence exists.
This is what I'm saying, is that both of these are presupposing this.
Yes, and that is...
It's impossible not to presuppose that.
Okay, so if that's what you mean, then yeah.
Mm-hmm.
This is what Rand means by not objective reality, because that once you say objective reality, it brings in a whole series of other things. What she means is that existence exists is the axiom that everyone speaks to, even when they attempt to deny it. Right? This is when she says, "Oh, you're going to prove that the mind is invalid." By what means are you going to prove it? You want to prove that reason is no good?
Yes.
Other than reason, what are you going to use to prove it?
Yes.
Are you going to say that reality doesn't exist? On what basis are you going to say that? There's nothing you can say that does not presuppose that existence exists.
Yes.
And therefore, what she talked about is two things. She talked about stolen concepts and floating abstractions. Now, she doesn't get into that in Galt's speech. You won't get that in that particular book. That's from, she wrote a book called An Introduction to Objectivist Epistemology, which you might find valuable, although her scholarship is lacking. Ideas, solid. Her representation of other people's ideas, weak, which is a general trend in Rand. Right? Her depiction of other people's ideas is almost always faulty, almost always insightful. She gets to the heart of what they're saying, but she misrepresents what they actually said. So, existence exists. Existence is identity. Consciousness is identification. And that is presupposed in everything everyone is saying. Now, people can say things like, reason is invalid. Well, what is valid? Well, valid is a function of reason.
Yeah.
Right? So what you've got...
Yeah. You have to use reason to deny reason.
Right. What she called a stolen concept. Right? Invalid is based on reason. But if you break that recognition, right? You have a floating abstraction. You have an abstraction that is not connected down into its axiomatic concepts.
Yes.
Right? Which means that you can then steal that abstraction and use it against its axiomatic concepts. That's called a stolen concept. Floating abstractions, abstractions which are not grounded in the chain of logic that led to them, down into their axioms and experience, tend to create stolen concepts. Right? A stolen concept is when you use a conclusion of an argument to deny one of its premises.